First, I want to thank TEDx Binghamton and my former intern, Paige Bagley, who invited me to speak to you today, because this is an awesome experience. There comes a time in our lives where we must ask ourselves, what is our mission? What is our purpose? And what do I stand for? Sometimes we're put in places where we can be an agent of change. And what will we do when that moment happens? How do you pivot? How do you adapt? One of my favorite shows when I was younger, in my teenage and 20s, was The West Wing. I thought it was an awesome show. It was cool to see how government worked from behind the scenes, and my favorite character in the show was the chief of staff, Leo McGarry, who was played by John Spencer. I thought it was the coolest job because you could be in meetings, advocate for people, but you didn't have to be the focal point. You could advocate for them and their causes, but not be front and center. Funny enough, I'm front and center now. I did not know how I would do it, but I knew that was the job I wanted. Years later, I transferred to Wilberforce University. I had met a lot of great people who helped me to become the person you see here today. One was the Vice President for Institutional Advancement, Marshall Mitchell. And he helped me. He was a former chief of staff to elected official himself, but he helped me to apply myself and to take leaps of faith. At the same time, I had a professor who's the focal point of my speech tonight, Professor Bacars, who expected more of me, and sometimes that more meant less. On my first day of class, I was that student who answered all the questions. Everybody hated me. Granted, it was a government class, and I was a little bit older, but I was a real know-it-all and a show-off. And after that, Professor Bacars spoke to me and told me I'm not allowed to speak in class anymore for that semester. This was so painful for me because it forced me to learn how to work differently. It forced me to help others to answer questions. And sometimes while I might have the right answer, it might not be my time to answer those questions. A number of classes and years later, when I was allowed to speak in class, he would call me into his office when he felt my work was not up to my ability. And adorned on the walls were civil rights leaders, history makers, and change agents like Malcolm X, John F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr., to say a few. And he would say, is this the kind of effort that Martin dreamed about? Is this the kind of work that John F. Kennedy wanted to see? When Malcolm was working for you, is this the kind of effort he died for? Now, those comments would hurt me to my core. And after a while, I understood what it meant. And while I was hard-headed then, and I still am hard-headed now, it did take me a while to get to the point. So my name is Jason Richberg. I'm a current county legislator for the 15th Legislative District. I represent more than 80,000 people. Before that, I worked in government, and my first job in government was Chief of Staff to Legislator Dwayne Gregory. After I was Chief of Staff, I was the Chief Deputy Clerk of the Legislature and later became the Clerk of the Legislature. My first 10 years in government gave me insight in how government works and sometimes how it doesn't work, and what issues there were there, but also allowed me to meet people and learn from some great individuals on how to get things accomplished. That 10 years mirrored for me the time when I was not allowed to speak in class. Not that I could not speak, but that it was not my job to speak. My job was to advise, to implement programs, to work with the community, to carry out my legislators' goals and missions, and not for me to be the focal point, but for me to give the answers to others. In March of 2020, I was elected. It was a very, very quiet time in our nation and in our world. There was no pandemics. There was no global shutdowns. There was no social unrest. Really, really quiet. Reality is, that's not true. All those things did happen. And a freshman legislator was cast into a world of unease. And this was one of those moments I spoke of earlier when we either rise to the challenge or fade to the background. Everything I knew, everything I thought was a constant, was about to or already had changed. I was no longer focused on economic development. I was focused on getting information out to the public. I spent more time researching programs and listening to doctors than I'd spent in my entire life before that. My family and my district were both hit hard from the pandemic. At one point, almost 8,000 people in my district had COVID-19. We were one of the hardest hit areas in Suffolk County. And that number was rising every second. In that moment, I was unsure. And one of the most important things I had to be okay with was the fact that I was unsure. I was unsure of what I was doing. I knew the purpose. I knew everything was changing so rapidly, but I had to keep focused on the end goal. So I went back and I wrote and I solidified what I believed my mission to be: to help as many people as possible, to build bridges and not walls, not to limit myself by my circumstances. So in those first 2 years as a legislator, I worked on countless initiatives and introduced and passed more than 50 pieces of legislation. Bringing equity and fairness back to our county, I took on fighting COVID, fighting for localized testing. I fought for people to wear their natural hair and religious garments in their workplace. I created a week to celebrate youth and their accomplishments, and I saw that false calls to the police were happening, so I created a human rights law so victims would have a civil way to have recourse. I created a law to mandate diversity training for our county employees. I worked to create a body camera program for our law enforcement. I joined with community stakeholders, lawmakers, and law enforcement to create a comprehensive police reform plan, and I put in legislation that commemorated Juneteenth. I worked with state legislators to assist a school district with connecting to sewers to rectify serious septic problems. I created a maternal mortality task force to develop strategies to support women around their childbearing experiences. In that time, I was asked all the time, why am I doing so much? Why don't I just slow down? Let somebody else take over. My response was back to my mission: to help as many people as possible, to build bridges and not walls. My lessons in college prepared me as life as a staffer, as a legislator, and as a leader. To listen first, to research, to step up next, and to keep the focus on the people, and to listen to those who have come before me, whether they are legends, change agents, parents, or mentors. I did not slow down because I saw an opportunity, a chance to begin evening the playing field. I was not sure what the next few years would bring, and if we would continue this progress, this moment of social justice. But reality crashed really soon, because the answer to all those questions was no. In November of 2021, many of my colleagues lost their elections. And that and with that, my party lost control of the legislature. For me, election night was like that scene in Independence Day. I know some of you might not know Independence Day, but in that movie, there's a scene where all the alien ships are coming in and the president is sitting in his office, and you're seeing each one of these major cities being destroyed. There are coordinated attacks on all the world capitals, and all you could do is stare as everything you've known, understood, and were comfortable with was gone. This was another moment where I was unsure. What would the future hold? Who would step up to lead? I was distraught, and it was difficult to sort through my feelings and emotions. But I decided that my mission remained. The players may have changed, and I had to adapt. So I reached out to my colleagues. I sought their support for me to be their new caucus leader. Me, a freshman legislator, taking on the reins of the caucus. I must be crazy. But then I thought of Professor Bukar's message to me and all the pictures he had adorned on the wall. I could almost hear him saying the words, "Is this the kind of effort?" And the answer in this case was yes. Why will I be the caucus leader? Because my mission has not changed. To help as many people as possible, to build bridges, not walls, and to lead in any way I can, and not to limit myself by my circumstances. Now this mission meant leading not just for my district, but for our caucus, for our ideals, to use my voice for others and other legislators. This is not always easy or clear as what is needed or what is intended. And sometimes it means I need to listen intently. And other times it means speaking forcefully. It goes back to my lessons in college, which I was not expecting. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, as elected officials and leaders, this is our mission. This is our mission. This is our calling. This is the beginning of our work and not the end. We are challenged every day to bring people together. We are here to build bridges. We are here to listen. Looking back at my younger days, sitting in Professor Bukar's classroom, I think about how difficult it was and how much I did not understand, how loud my distractions were, and how much I needed to hear that sometimes I have to sit and listen. Sometimes while I might have the answers, they are not always for me to give. And sometimes I simply just don't have the answer. And that is okay. There are times when I need to check in on myself to ensure my effort is truly in that moment. And I do have to do the hard work. The other lesson is that this is not about me. While I'm here today, this is about the collective. All of my achievements, they are not mine alone. They come from the lessons my parents instilled in me, the things my family has said to me, the encouraging words I've heard from others, the work of my team, be it my staff, my friends, my volunteers, and those working to build coalitions because they believe. They believe in our community, and this is where my mission comes from. As long as I remember that and keep that in focus, I can continue my mission. So before I leave, I will ask you all to do one thing, to ask yourself these questions. What is my mission? What am I doing to help others? And how am I lifting up others so that they can do the same? Thank you.